Hello everyone. Today I am very honored to interview Master Ivan Ang. He is 45 years old, living in Singapore, and is the Sun style martial art 4th generation. Master Ivan, please introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm Ivan Ang, 4th generation Sun style internal martial arts.
Okay, Ivan Ang is looking very young. So, usually, martial arts masters are often stereotyped as elder men with flowing white beard. So, as a very young outlook for master teaching today, have you ever faced skepticism about your age? And how do you use your actual skill to shatter this prejudice?
Okay, I would think that it's pretty normal for people who think that Tai Chi masters have to be of what in the West they call it the little old man, being old and being having white beard and all this. But I think what's important is we also do acknowledge that these people have gone through a long phase of life in order to achieve what they have done in probably their 60s, 70s and 80s. So what's more important to me is your strong knowledge of the art itself. So not so much about whether you have the ability to fight and all this stuff, because you're in a era where martial arts itself, right, is more of something like a culture rather than something of fighting and all this stuff, right? Because there's guns and weapons and so on and so forth, right? So in order to make sure that I stay at a stage where people do recognize me, okay, as a trans person that transmits knowledge, my knowledge of the arts itself must be very strong. Okay, so in terms of Tai Chi Chuan especially, because I started off with Chen style Tai Chi Chuan, I was already reading the theories of Chen style Tai Chi Chuan, such as the Chen Changxing, Yong Wu Yao Yuan, things that are written by Chen Changxing or Chen style 14th generation, and all the rest of the stuff of the Chen Si and so on and so forth. In a similar context for Sun Si, we are very rich with theories and all this, and particularly I think it's important because sometimes especially in internal martial arts, the theory will back your practice. So rather than just doing practice blindly, we need to understand what our forefathers and of course the founder, in our case Sun Wukong, wants us to understand. So having a strong knowledge of the basis of the theory that backs the arts, I think is very important. And of course, the best way will always be when the theory can inform the arts and the arts themselves, right, can prove that the theory is correct. So both works in similar ways. I am of course not a grandmaster of the arts as per se, but at least what I aim always to be is to make sure that those stuff that I transmit, especially in terms of culture, is being understood by many people. And that's also the reason why I went all the way to Beijing to learn under my master from the Sun family, Grandmaster Sun Wenrong. When we transmit the art, we also do transmit the culture of the family and what Sun Wukong wants us to practice. When we do practice our Sun style arts, in terms of cultural backing, my Shifu always wants us to make sure that we understood clearly what Sun Wukong wants us to know. That's why we are tasked to actually read the books clearly and to bring up any misconceptions in the book. So our Shifu will try to answer those questions as far as possible, because when she practiced the arts herself from the father Sun Chunzhou, she started practicing the actual form exactly from the book, and not what is being seen these days on social media. So it's exactly what you see in the book. You flip the book and you look at her do the form itself, it is exactly the same. So these are the things that she told us to take note. Why is it like that? And of course, there will always be time when things are not very clear. Then that's where we will go over to ask her, and then to do auto correction and all this stuff, because she is on herself the first-hand account in learning the arts. So she's able to help us decipher what is inside the arts, what exactly is going on, and how is it being used, and so on and so forth. I think that's very important, and it's a valuable resource for me, having all this knowledge, so that I can also disseminate this knowledge and teach the arts overseas, and of course maybe in Singapore, as well as some of the students who are based overseas. So whether or not I am of 45 or 95, I think what's most important is I must have this wealth of knowledge in order to teach. So to me, it's not so much of whether I am of a certain age or not, but whether when we converse with students or with other practitioners, we are able to pinpoint to the practitioners what are the things that you need to take note, and what are the historical facts, at least from the family point of view, is happening, and what leads to this form that's being produced. Like for example, if we talk about Sun style Tai Chi Chuan, a lot of people tend to think of Sun style Tai Chi Chuan, especially in the West, as a mixture of Xing Yi, Ba Gua, and Tai Chi Chuan. So in particular, for example, maybe this particular stance is from Xing Yi, this particular stance is from Ba Gua, and so on and so forth. But it's not true, is it? When Sun Wukong unified the art, and I will use the word unified because rather than plugging in individual arts, what Sun Wukong actually did was he set up a theoretical basis for understanding internal martial arts using the Book of Changes, which is I Ching, and then from that to explain the arts themselves. That's why when he tried to unify the arts, it's no longer that this particular movement looks like this, or particular movement looks like Xing or whatever thing. Every art, Sun style Xing Yi, Sun style Ba Gua, and Sun style Tai Chi must, and I reiterate, must start from Wu Ji Xue, Tai Chi Xue, San Ti. These three things, it is a must for all three arts. So it's not just a Tai Chi Chuan thing. And then from there, that will develop the necessary basis for the rest of the training to come. So these are the things that not many people would know. So especially people who only practice Sun style Tai Chi Chuan, and for those people who practice Sun style Tai Chi Chuan, competitive routine like 73 steps, obviously they will know this in general, because the idea here about practicing that is more for competition, less more about really understanding the Sun style art themselves.
Okay, as all of us know, Singapore is a highly pragmatic, fast-paced modern metropolis. So in this environment, what's prompted you to settle your mind and dedicate so much of your life to an ancient traditional martial arts? And these require such a long cycle to master.
Okay, this must start from when I first started learning Tai Chi Chuan. So my base art is actually Chen style Tai Chi Chuan. So I started Chen style when I was about 9 or 10 in 1990. I met my first teacher from China. So I had the opportunity to do one-to-one with the teacher, and that was very, very young. At that point of time, of course, we all have the stereotype that Tai Chi is for old people and slow and all those stuff. But because my first art was Chen style Tai Chi, and I didn't realize that the art that I was learning is actually Chen style Tai Chi in an amusement sense. So when I started to learn under my teacher, it was just pure interest, and of course I was very young. It was just pure interest. So I learned. I managed to do Lao Jia, Ilu Eru, managed to do the saw, cross saw, push hand, and few of the combat moves. So that became part and parcel of my childhood life back then. So when I began to know a bit more on Tai Chi Chuan, especially I met a few people along the way, and that was, I think, probably late primary school, early secondary school. I was in Bras Basah complex, which is a complex in Singapore that sells books. So there was this bookshop on the second story. The boss back then, Master Low, was a master of Yang style Tai Chi Chuan and praying mantis and a few other things. So he was directing me to a few books, and I realized that the things that I'm practicing was actually Chen style Tai Chi Chuan. So I stayed in the bookshop for quite a while. In fact, actually I visited the bookshop very, very frequently. So I read a few things, read a few books, and then that does open my mind a little more. So I began to know more things, and around almost the same time, about 95, I started to do Sun style with my friend. So we had an exchange. I taught my friend Chun style, he taught me Sun style, and that's my first encounter with Sun style. So from there on, I began to immerse more in martial arts. And of course, at the same time, I also do practice Taekwondo, because every young boy has a Taekwondo dream. So I do practice Taekwondo, and I realized that at the same time, I'm able to peer coach my friends and teach. So at about 15 or 16, I started to teach Tai Chi Chuan to one or two of my friends, and that's where I feel that I have the ability to disseminate some knowledge. So as time goes on, with a bit more knowledge in mind, I'm able to share a bit more, and so on and so forth. That's one. Number two also is you must like the art. You must really like the art. So a lot of people over the course of time, right? People were always asking me, why are you so into this? Is it really a hobby about this? So coming to talk about hobby, right? If you ask me about this, I haven't really thought of it as a hobby, because this hobby is something that I want to spend a bit of time. I just do, but Tai Chi comes very natural to me. I'll just do it. Yeah. So I don't specifically dedicate a time weekends. Do when I was in secondary school. Basically, I just do it every day. I come back home, I will do Sunday morning before I go to school. I will do, so I keep practicing the forms. It just comes to me naturally. Yeah. So I know that I really like the art. Yeah. So when you really like something, sometimes when you spend a bit of time on it, you don't really calculate the time that you spend on it. You just do it, and then it just becomes part and parcel of my life as time goes on. So when it comes to about 2003, my teacher asked me to go for an instructor course. Prior to that, I have been assisting my teacher to teach Tai Chi Chuan for some years. So he said that you go for the course, and if you pass, then all the more better. Now you are a registered coach, you can take a place and teach and coach. So after 2003, I went for the examinations and I passed in just one go. Then after that, I continued to assist my teacher in teaching them for a couple of years. I also started teaching in NTU, and while I was an undergraduate there, so I taught a class there, coming to about 20 people. We do Chen Shi there, and not so much Sun Shi. I don't really teach Sun Shi outside, so most of the time is Chen Shi. And then after that, when I come out and I go to do Sun Shi, and then most of the time now I am doing Sun Shi teaching. My belief always is that if it is beneficial for me, in terms of actually more in terms of health, and not so much more about combat or this stuff, I believe that it will be beneficial for people as well, right? So I always believe that I am more of a cultural disseminator, not so much of a martial artist, in a sense. Where you mean we don't go outside and fight rings like MMA and all this type of stuff, but more about keeping culture alive. And cultural preservation is very, very difficult. Any cultural preservation is very, very difficult. So, to me, I discovered that there is such a culture that, to me, I believe is worth preserving in terms of martial arts. So to me now is I want to preserve this culture. That's why I go all the way to Beijing. I want to learn about everything about Sun style, from the arts to the history to the family and all this stuff. So when I believe in this cause, I want to share with people, and that's also the reason why I spend the time and effort, and of course with the help of my disciples, to start Singapore Sun style internal martial arts research institute, and this place where we are now.
Okay, just now you say sharing. So for modern people, the biggest enemy are often not opponents in the ring, but sedentary lifestyle, stress, and suboptimal health. So if you were speaking to a white-collar workers grinding away in office every day, how will you explain the unique value of Sun style martial art to them?
Okay, I think first thing is there should be two situations. The first situation is, do you have the interest first that you want to improve your life? Okay. When we talk about improving life, it can be in multiple ways. Obviously, will not be in terms of monetary, obviously, but more about getting the health, or even in terms of mental health, which is, I think, the big thing these days. Okay, this is one. The second one is, I don't want to know, I just want to exercise. So there are people who are like that, especially people who have not thought about taking time off to practice. Okay, so the first thing is, in order to come into the internal martial arts, or even internal martial arts, or any other form of exercise, is you want to give it a try. Okay, you want to clear your mind in the first place. If you cannot calm down and clear your mind, no matter what you do, right, anything is futile. Okay? If you can clear your mind, you can do running, you can do any other thing. So to us is Sun style arts. First thing first is to clear mind, and for us it becomes very natural because our first movement or stance, whichever you call it, is the study of non-polarity, which is Wu Ji Xue. Right? So when you're in the Wu Ji Xue, of course there are physical requirements to the Wu Ji Xue, but internally you need to be able to calm your mind down. Calming your mind down is very difficult, actually, to be honest. If I were to ask you not to think of anything, at the end of the day you will keep thinking about it. Okay? So rather than that, one of the small things that you can actually try is, for example, if you're, like you mentioned, white-collar worker, and you're typing your computer away, whatever stuff, close your computer, or put your computer aside, or turn your chair to one side, look at the window, look far ahead, okay? Sometimes blank out, okay? Clear your mind, okay? Push away that rubbish. To me, everything is rubbish, because if you don't clear your mind, okay, of things, you cannot welcome new things in. So you need to clear your mind first. And that's basically the same as what we do in Wu Ji Xue. Okay? You have to look far ahead until a stage where you're going to clear your mind. And then slowly close your eyes, take a deep breath, and then you come back to work. And that is exactly what we want to do in our Sun style arts. So if you're able to do that, yeah, congratulations, you have been, you're taking a small first step towards that. And if you find that it's beneficial, why not stand up and do? Then why not put your legs together and so on and so forth. So you add on to this, especially for the very busy executive in today's era, because let's just face the fact that not many people, in fact most of the people, don't have the time to really sit down and do the arts, especially do 98 steps. They're not going to have the time. Number one, they are not going to travel. They probably just want to sit down in a place, exercise, or even go to the, if they stay in condominium or nearby, go to the gym and just that's about it. So a lot of times, right, when we want to talk about coming into the internal martial arts to practice, right, for busy individuals, first thing first is we want to target mental health, about clearing of the mind first, before we talk about exercising and all this stuff. Because if you cannot clear your mind, there's no way you can do other things.
Okay. So practicing martial arts require a massive time investment. So how do you balance your work duties with your martial arts cultivation in your daily life?
Okay, we have to say a few facts first, right? We are living in modern Singapore. Everybody has 24 hours. It's basically very difficult. I won't say it is impossible, but very difficult for a person working from 9 to 5 to really get into martial arts. I mean, as a former teacher and teacher in ministry school and MOE and the polytechnic, my work could start from morning 6 something to sometimes evening, even late night. So sometimes you really don't have the time. Okay, so what I normally do is in order to stay connected and make sure that I practice, I will squeeze out probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes sometimes to practice very basic stuff. Like for example, we talk about Tai Chi Chuan Lan Jia Yi. If you really practice 15 minutes, you can do a lot to practice. And of course, if you have the extra time, then you can spend the time to do the entire form and all this kind of stuff. So that went on for a couple of years while I was working. Okay, after varsity. Then of course when I want to really propagate the art, that's where I made the decision to focus more on the art. I resigned from the job and focus primarily on the arts and other stuff, of course, in order to make ends meet. But I now have a lot more time to be able to dwell into the arts. Okay, practicing is one thing, and of course to share with more people. Because as a former civil servant and public servant, of course you're not supposed to go out and moonlight and do other work. So when I'm out of the system, I have now a bit more time, and I can do and practice and all this kind of stuff. So being pragmatic wise, when we are working right from a 9 to 5 job, right, the only time that we actually have is actually night time, to be honest, right? So in the night practice for 2 hours, you really have to put in the effort to learn and keep practicing. One of the main things that modern workers don't have is they're always talking about time. That's always the one thing. And then when you're in the night, you feel very sleepy, you're very tired, you don't want to work. But what I do urge people is, if you have 5 minutes, and I believe 5 minutes you will have, you can do something about it. Okay. So that's one thing that I think is very important. But of course, if you really want to go into the arts, any arts or any other form of industry or hobby, be it yoga or be it any other things, you probably need to really spend hours per day at least, to get in. Yeah. So that is something that is kind of important.
Many people have misconception about Qi in internal martial arts. If we put aside mysticism and look purely at the precise alignment of physical structure, or the process of developing the muscle and bones layer by layer, how will you explain the actual power generation fighting in internal martial arts?
Okay, I think the first thing that we need to realize is a lot of people, especially in the West, if I'm not wrong, tend to think about Qi and then try to develop Qi and whatever. Okay, then but the problem now is, in order for the Qi to develop, right, the structure have to be done first. Okay? It's just like if you want to produce good iron, for example. When you melt the iron, you have to refine the iron, then you need to have a good furnace. So the furnace must be good, the structure must also be good. So in terms of internal martial art, the first thing, right, whether Xing Fa or Tai Chi, is to have the proper structure. Right? This is the reason why there are forms, traditional forms I'm talking about, and why are the forms structured in that way. So having the forms done up must always be the priority. In Sun Tang's words, right, there are always three areas that we need to talk about, and they're sequential. So the first one is actually 义骨, to make sure that in literal translation means to ease the bones. Okay, ease the bones. Primarily talking about structures. Okay? Then the second part will be the 义筋, that's to ease the tendons. And then after that you 洗髓, which is to bone marrow washing. So the first thing is you need the structure to be up because your furnace have to be up. Does it mean that if without this you cannot feel the qi? No, it's not true. But it will be more difficult. It will be much more difficult. Then the next question is, what is the purpose of the qi then for you when you don't have all this type of stuff? You know, right? So there's no point of developing qi or this stuff when your physical structure is weak. Okay? So getting a good body up and going is very important in order for you to so-called contain the energy and so on and so forth. So using Sun style as an example, okay. So Sun style was developed by Sun Tang, obviously, if you look at the book, and then there are very strict requirements about what Sun Tang wants us to practice. And the original intent of Sun style Tai Yuan based on Sun Tang idea is it's not for combat. That's not the original content. You talk about combat, yeah, we have Xingyi, we have Bagua. Of course, you want to use it for defense, yeah, it's possible. Okay? But the original intent is not that. The original intent is to make sure that everyone, when it's disseminated out, everyone will be able to learn it well and get a good body, and get good health. Okay? That's the idea of Sun style, right? Therefore, right, in terms of structural arrangement, there are certain things that Sun Tang wants you to achieve. We then have to ask ourselves, while we do Sun style Tai Chi now, okay, the way that we do, maybe for example, we talk about 单边 single whip. A lot of us try to do 单边, they do like this. We go out. Okay. Then some people idea say, when you push the window and you stretch out, and you feel very good. Okay, fair enough. If you want to do it like this, it's fine. But that is again your own interpretation. Does it help? If you find it's helpful, fair enough. Okay. What Sun Tang wants you to do is he wants you to stretch all the way to the back. Okay. And then the question now is, so we have to ask ourselves, when Sun Tang wants us to do this, how do we feel? And after that feeling, do we think that it's beneficial to us? It probably should be. Okay. Anyway, Sun Tang is a grandmaster, so he knows what are the things that needs to be done. So a lot of us, when we practice the art now, especially like my Shifu, she always wants us to go back to the book and look at Sun Tang's book and think of why Sun Tang is so precise about the form and ask us to do this, do that. How is it beneficial to us in that certain sense? So we don't do it blindly. Okay? Then we try to reap the benefit from that. Then in order for us to understand the rest of the stuff. So you get a structure up, then from the structure you get your tendons going and so on and so forth. You don't have to worry about bone marrow washing, you don't have to worry about the qi flowing or energy flowing, because they should come naturally in that sense. That's why it is important for us, at least our view, to always go back to ask what Sun Tang wants us to learn in terms of Sun Shi. And I should say it should be the same for any of the arts. What your founder wants you to actually know for that particular art. So that's why sometimes it's important for us to look at old books and try to decipher specifically what are the things there, and then ask ourselves why is it like that. So there must be certain reason for it.
Okay, just now you mentioned the structure, the stances and the posture training. So it's almost like stamping a seal on the body to lock in a specific physical structure and mental state. So in Sun style system, what is the core seal or imprint?
I would say this word called 中和, seeking the medium, right? If you are familiar with Confucianism, in Confucianism there's a term called 中庸. Okay, you can loosely translate as a medium. It's not entirely accurately, okay, but it can be loosely translated as the medium. Okay? Finding the medium or finding the middle point. Okay, so we talk about a physical example. Say for example, brush knee when you go forward and push forward. So a lot of people tend to think about, okay, when I go forward, my whole body will go forward, so on and so forth. But if you look at Sun Wukong's book and based on our Sun Shi practice, right, you'll notice that when the hand goes forward, what he also wants you to do is you want this part to move backwards. So there's a retreat. So when hand goes forward, the body moves forward, you are actually trying to mitigate and find an equilibrium point. Okay? So this equilibrium point is not static, it's always dynamic. It can move everywhere or anywhere. Okay? And that's actually what Sun Wukong wants us to find out. Because everything in this world, there's always a point that is always this equilibrium point, middle point. So whether you practice Xi Yi Quan, Tai Yi Quan, or Ba Gua Quan, you're always looking at this particular part. This is what we call 综合 in general. Okay, in general. Of course, there are more philosophical explanation, but this is a bit more layman term when I talk about this. However, the one that is more observational is physical, because this is not actually physical. Okay, if you don't talk to somebody who is actually practicing traditional Sun style, actually you will not see it. Like when I do this, you can't really see that this part goes in. Okay? But what you can see, as what Grandmaster Sun Jianyun actually does often mention, is what are the characteristics, okay, of Sun style Tai Chi Chuan, for example. So that means your first front leg go forward, when you advance, you follow, you retreat, and you also follow, and every time you turn, there's an opening and closing hand. These are characteristics. But beyond these characteristics, the core of Sun style arts is actually 综合. So 综合 transcends throughout Sun style Xi Yi Quan, Sun style Ba Gua Quan, and Sun style Tai Yi Quan.
Okay, master in the past were often exceptionally strict. They want to follow this style and you must do it. But modern teaching should be an inclusive, tailored, and joyful process. So how do you customize your teaching for people with different physical conditions while making them feel the joy of practice?
Okay, I think this one is an important point for two groups of people. The first group of people are the students in general, right? And the other group of people is for the disciples, right? And the disciples are actually relatively easier. Okay, why I say easier is because the fact that a teacher takes you in as the disciple, there must be some mutual agreement on certain things, right? At least from the Sun style perspective, and that's exactly some of the considerations before my Shifu take me in as a disciple, right? That you are fully committed to the art. You want to do research on the art, you want to practice, and you want to make sure you reach a higher level than before. I won't say high level, I say higher level than before, because how high the level is really individual, right? Okay, but it's higher level than before. So there's no other negotiation in practice. Okay? Just make sure you practice, do well, and just get on with it, and make sure that you reach that level that you desire, right? And for the students, it's a bit different, right? And the students, of course, again, there are always two groups of students. The first group of students is those with no prior knowledge at all. So to get them interested in the practice first. Okay? So in order to get them interested, the first thing always is, what are the things that are relevant to their everyday life? Okay? As you mentioned at the very beginning, modern day workers, people, one of the worst things that can happen is you're sitting at the chair, every day, 4 hours, 5 hours. You're not exercising. Okay? So how to ensure that those things that you practice in the Sun style arts, you can bring over to your workplace? I think that one is very important, right? So for new people, sometimes I will say that, okay, I mean, you come in, you want to practice Tai Chi Chuan or whatever thing, okay? But certain things I will take it out and I will tell them, say for example, every time you come to Tai Chi class, right, there are certain basic things you need to practice. Wu Ji, San Ti, whatever, and then Kai Shou, Lan Zai Yi. Today you feel tired, your leg feels tired, right? You can just sit down and then do a bit of Kai Shou, take a slow breath, breathe in and breathe out. Okay? So these are things that probably will be a bit beneficial, and it's easier to do. I mean, if you're busy, okay, you want to take your mind off a bit, and you start to get frustrated, okay, close your eyes, do a few Kai Shou, take a breather, okay, go back work. Yeah, so these are some of the things that brings it in. So if you find that it's beneficial, again, like I mentioned before, okay, stand up now. Then you are cash also, okay, more beneficial. And you have a bit of time, try your lanjai. A bit more time, maybe even lunchtime, do the form. So these are the things that as you find it beneficial to you, automatically you will want to do more. So what my job here is to bring you in to this feeling. I think that's the most important thing of the teacher, rather than teach you everything or ask you go for competition or performance. These are secondary stuff, and I think those are important as well, but they are not the core. The most important thing is when you come and learn, or at least you learn something, whether you can bring it to the workplace or you bring it to your everyday life and then make it work. Walking, for another example, talk about advance and retreat styles art. So when you practice the advance and retreat, what is something that's tangible that you can bring it back to your everyday life? When you walk, you are stable, and I think that's very important. As you age, one of the most important things that to take note is you must make sure that you don't fall down, because a lot of old folks they fall and it becomes very serious, it can lead to death. Okay? So with proper walking, like Sun style parkour, right? With proper walking forward as well as backward, okay, you want to improve the balance of the older folks. Okay? And if you teach older folks before, you will know that especially 70 years and above, one of the things that is very worrying is the way that they walk and stand sometimes. Okay? So you must ensure that they are able to do slow walking back and especially backwards. Okay? And you find that if they can learn this well, right, read the benefits, then you actually reduce. I won't say prevent totally, definitely not prevent. No one can guarantee, but it reduce the chance of them falling backwards. I think this is something that is helpful for them in terms of health. Of course, the rest of the stuff are all more about culture stuff. If you're really interested and you're from more culture person, you know more about 太极拳, 新拳, 八卦拳, yeah, that's the time that I can really disseminate fully about all these things. But at the very first instant, to get people on board, I think these are the nitty-gritty stuff that we need to get them interested and up and go first.
You mentioned the internal martial arts is developed from the Book of Changes, I Ching. But this need a deep understanding of Chinese culture. So how do you introduce to someone who totally blind of Chinese culture students?
Okay, so first thing is again depending on what is your intention when you come. So if your intention is like what you mentioned, that's the prerequisite, right? That when I want to learn about Tai Chuan, it's not about I just want to learn what's the movement about it. I want to learn the philosophy behind the Tai Chuan. And yet at the same time, also depending on the person's knowledge. If my assumption is the person has zero knowledge of Chinese philosophy or Chinese culture as per se, right? Then the first thing that I would always introduce is what is the Chinese view of the universe. Okay, that's very important. Okay, if you look at the scientific view, of course, and these days if you talk about physics, you talk about Big Bang, first 3 minutes, and so on and so forth, and formation of planets and black holes and whatever stuff. So that's the scientific view. You look at the Chinese view of universe, it's always everything in this universe is connected. So the Chinese always view things holistically, which is why martial arts. You talk about martial arts, you talk about Book of Changes, you talk about traditional Chinese medicine, right? They always look at the person as the universe as a whole. So you start off by introducing this idea of Uji, non-polarity. It's very similar to what happens before the Big Bang, right? And then after that, from the Uji, you develop into Taiji, when you have the grand extremes, what they call. Then after that, the Liang Yi Shan Ti, and then Si Xiang Ba Gua, and so that's how it develops. So one of the things also is to let people know that when we look at Ba Gua, in the sense that especially people with zero knowledge, they always tend to link Ba Gua purely with Taoism. Taoism in the sense of not the philosophical part, but the religious part. So there will be people saying, I'm not Taoist, I cannot practice this stuff. So it's not about this. The idea of Fa is about the philosophical part. Sure enough, Taoism, in terms of religion, they do adopt that as well. Some of the stuff, they also do learn some of the stuff. But this is more of Chinese culture. It's not so much about religion. We're not talking about religion. Nothing to hold with joystick. Not about that. It's about how the ancient Chinese look at the universe, and they are very good with recording. They do recordings. They observe nature. And that's where you have your 24季节, the 24 seasons and all this type of stuff. So, I Ching is a understanding of the universe as a whole because of the recordings back then, and then they understand that, and then use that to sort of predict. A bit like big data these days when we talk about data science predicting, and all this regression and whatever stuff. So they did that a few thousand years ago. So what we actually want these people who are interested in this area to first understand the universe, how it works. Then I will bring in the form itself, the chain itself, Sun Shi chain itself, to see that you see how when we want to start off the art, we also start ourselves with Wu Ji Xue first. So having a state of non-polarity, so you don't think about what Xing to the Dan Tian, don't think about your hand to heal, nothing at all. So at the very beginning, where you're always one with the universe. The non-polarity, that means it's not between you and the universe. There's no difference between you and the universe. That's what we want to achieve first. So you become one with the universe. Whatever universe entails and mean to you, I think that's very important. You have your own religious idea, you have your own philosophical view. That's fine. But you are one with the universe, and I think no religion or no philosophy will have a contradiction to that. Okay? And then from there you slowly develop the idea of there's Tai Chi Xue because there's some thoughts, Wu Ji and then San Ti, and then Fa Gua basically means that you are now understanding that the elements in the world behave like this. Fire is like that, water is like that, so on and so forth. Okay? So we take away the mysticism, like you mentioned. Okay, we think of fire as or something of a natural phenomenon. I won't call it like how the Greek think of it as elemental, because elements we have chemistry, we have periodic table, but more about natural phenomena. You can think of it as natural phenomena. That's exactly what I Ching is talking about, right? In this pure entity, talking about Qian, which is just talking about heaven. Heaven is there, right? Talking about Kun, you're talking about earth, you're talking about the mountains, you're talking about the song, you're talking about fire, water, you're talking about wind. Okay, so these are things that are natural phenomena. So basically, is when you're practicing, you are either behaving like those natural phenomena, or you are actually borrowing the energy from the natural phenomena. That's about it. Okay, that's about it. So no religion, nothing at all. So by understanding this first, then when you practice, you know what you're practicing. That when you practice Tai Chi Chuan, right? Okay, I know it's benefit for health. Harvard research has already shown. There's no need for me to talk about it. Okay? The only other thing that we need to talk about it is more of the internal things, right? And how this can be manifested when you practicing. So I think that's more important in terms of cultural dissemination, and not so much about the other things.
Okay. Any arts will change or evolve during different phases and times. So in modern city and age like Singapore, what's your think Sun style martial art? What is the core items we need to keep and what can be evolved?
Okay, when we talk about core items we need to teach, again, like I mentioned before, I don't call myself as a martial artist, more of a cultural disseminator. So we want to preserve as much of the culture as possible. Okay, that's number one. Right? Okay. So we learn everything about what Sun Tang has learned, has taught. So within the fraternity, as example, within fraternity, it's actually very holistic. So we talk about, other than the forms, we have the theory, we also do practice the inner elixir training, we have the stretching and all this kind of stuff we do, and all these we kept as culture. Okay? Like if you are talking about in line with modern trends, right? Okay. A lot of times, some people will tend to reduce the form from say 98 to 42, 73, even 10, 13 form. To me is I am not so interested in those stuff because I am not in a position. Okay, that's my view. I'm not in a position to actually reduce the form. Okay? First thing is I'm not from the Sun family, obviously. Okay, so I don't have the authority to do it. Second thing is, when we do it, what is the purpose of it? A lot of people then think that you cut down so that people can learn a form. But if you just want to have a abbreviated form of shortened form, how is it beneficial to you? I myself don't see the benefits. Okay, for example, I myself don't see the benefits. Probably it's something that, okay, sense of self gratification, probably, I know the 13 form, I can do a 13 form. If that is the case, then okay, fair enough. Okay, I understand. But it doesn't transmit some of the essential stuff. And talk about internal martial arts in general, right? Actually, the internal martial art history comes not from the form, actually comes from individual movement. So the older folks back then, in 100 over years ago, they don't start by learning forms, they start by learning individual movements. Like for example, if I talk about Lan Jia Yi, so I could have this fella practicing Lan Jia Yi for the next 1 hour, every day 1 hour, nothing else, even with the teacher beside. So until you get on something, okay, now you start practicing single weight, okay, for another hour or so, just this alone. So once you have all this thing done, then you start to build them together into a form. Then you practice the form. And of course, this is reverse. Okay, I want to practice the form. So now more is I know how many forms, rather than I know
why we do it.
Why we do it. So in that essence, actually, if we go back to the 100 years ago and we bring those ideas back, sometimes it's fitting for this generation. Why? Because you don't have the time to actually do the form. Why not just do Lan Jia Yi? You'll probably be a bit more happier at this point. Unless you are a form collector. I will stop on form collection. And it's very true. It's not wrong actually to be a form collector, because there are people who just like forms and they want to teach also, and eventually become a teacher and want to teach. So you could be a collector of forms, and 100 forms, 200 forms. It's fair enough, and it's very good, because as a form collector you are also preserving the form themselves, which is very good. Okay. For us is we are not so much about this. So the fortunate and the unfortunate thing is, the fortunate thing is we do keep a lot of training methods, especially indoors. Right? There are certain things that we don't normally teach outside the fraternity. But the downside is a lot of forms are lost. So like I was telling people about some forms that from the West they will definitely not know. One of them is Xing Yi Spear. Right? We call it the Xing Yi Cyclic Fringe Spear. This form, I'm the first person that actually put the form out, and my martial brother Deng Fu Ming actually has a VCD on it. I think some of the West people will have already saw the video. Okay. So these forms. Then we have things like Xing Yi staff, which is also not taught outside the West, not even taught outside China. Basically, we have double hooks, which is also something that is not taught outside. We have Ba Gua Spear, which is very interesting because Sun Jianyun's book, when she mentioned about the story of his father, in the last few pages she actually mentioned that the manuscript for Ba Gua Spear, Ba Gua Qiang Xue is lost. But I also want to take the opportunity to now with this interview to say that the manuscript is lost, correct, but the form is not lost. It's actually still being practiced in China, but with a very, very small group of people. And our Ba Gua Spear is actually double-headed spear. So it's still there. So these are the things that to the general group of people, right, especially even for the Sun family, they are not important because to keep them, yeah, culturally I can keep them. But what is more important is Sun Wukong's training methods and ideas. That's why you will notice that Sun style on the outside to many people, especially Sun Shi Tai Chi, we have very little forms. Basically, right, in all honesty now, right, we only have 98 or 97 depending on how you see it. Okay. Sun Shi Tai Chi short 2% practice, 推手, that's it. Compared to Chen Shi, we have wealth of weapon, long weapon, short weapon, no, we don't have. So there are things that are lost from the Tai Chi itself. We have long staff, the 大杆子, which in the Wu style, Wu Hao style, Chen style, Yang style, they still practice. Okay, but we used to have it, but it's lost. No one practices it anymore. We used to have the 2% pro practice. Also nobody practice anymore. Because most of the time they are focusing more practicing the Tai Chi Chuan into the arts and all this stuff. So things are lost. So that's the downside for us. That's why as a cultural person myself, I want to try to seek out and practice as many of this stuff as possible to keep the tradition alive. Because God knows that 2 generations later, 4 generations later, how many more things will be lost? No one will know, right? So one of the things for us in the Singapore Sun Style Internal Martial Art Research Institute is to ensure that all these arts are being disseminated and passed down to people who are interested to learn. Yeah, so I think that's very important for us.
Okay, thank you very much for Master Ivan Ang share his knowledge and experience. Okay, thank you. Hope to see you next time.